Elara curled up on the worn-out sofa, a thin blanket draped around her shoulders, barely shielding her from the chill seeping in through the cracked window. On the table sat her last cup of ramen. She stared at it like it was a life-or-death decision. Eat it now or save it for the night. Her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a familiar notification. Your account balance is under $20. Please add funds. Elara exhaled slowly. Not a single penny from job applications over the past 4 months. She had graduated top of her class in business administration, once the rising star at a tech startup. But the company collapsed after a lawsuit. And since then, every door seemed to slam shut. She glanced toward the front door, where an orange slip clung like an open wound: 3-day pay or quit notice. An ultimatum. The FaceTime ringtone echoed. Her younger sister Lily appeared on the screen, chestnut hair falling over her shoulders, behind her a wall covered with sheet music. Lily was studying violin at Juilliard, the dream school they had once both looked up to like heaven. Elara, I'm so sorry. The dorm fees just went up. I don't know what to do anymore. Lily's voice cracked, and Elara's heart broke into pieces. She swallowed her tears. It's okay. I've got it covered. Even though she had no plan, only the fragile hope that tomorrow might change something. After the call, Elara sat in silence. Her laptop screen glowed dimly, job listings still open. She scrolled to the very bottom, an old post, seemingly forgotten, seeking estate manager for private residence in Big Sur. Room and board included. Salary, $120,000 a year. Elara let out a dry laugh. Too good to be true. In the comment section below, warnings whispered like demons. Working for Julian Thorne is walking into hell on the hill. He's the ghost of Silicon Valley. Not a boss, he's a soul warden. She scrolled to the bottom. No applicants. The listing was still live. Her eyes drifted to a faded photo beside the laptop, the two sisters on a grassy field, Lily holding her violin, Elara smiling widely. A time before bills, before sleepless nights, before the fear of letting down someone you love. She turned back to the screen. Her hand trembled slightly as it hovered over the mouse. Hell it is, if it keeps Lily playing. She clicked apply. Less than 30 minutes later, a reply arrived. Interview at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow. Location, Thorn Crest, Big Sur. Elara stared at the screen. Part of her wanted to believe this was a chance. Another part feared it was fate's final trap. Outside, the wind swept through the cold buildings of San Jose. Inside, a 26-year-old woman braced herself to walk into a place no one dared, just to preserve the sound of a dream not yet extinguished. The old taxi turned onto the Cliffside road, its tires screeching against the white gravel like metal grinding on porcelain. Elara gripped the strap of her canvas bag, her palms slick with sweat. In front of her, the massive iron gate slowly opened without a sound, as if the place itself was deciding who was worthy to enter. Thorn Crest emerged. A colossal structure of glass and grey steel, it jutted out from the cliffside like an eagle clinging to the edge of the world. No grand arches, no welcoming trees, only an absolute ruthless beauty that radiated coldness. The air was sharp and salty, like a blade, the scent of Big Sur's ocean wind mixing with cedar wood and something else. Something like freshly cut metal. Elara stepped out of the car, her worn shoes crunching awkwardly against the flawless stone path. The front door opened automatically. Inside, everything was silent, so still she could hear her own heartbeat, a human sound within an emotionless kingdom. Miss Vance. A woman's voice, sharp as stone, broke the silence. It was Mrs. Albright, Julian's assistant. tall poised, her white blouse crisp without a single crease. "This is your tablet. It contains the house rules. You'll need to memorize them before tomorrow." Elara took it and skimmed a few lines. Room temperature 19.4 degrees. No more, no less. Coffee geisha beans brewed with Chemex, ready by 5:45 a.m. No footsteps, no singing, no whispering. Never enter the West Greenhouse, no reason, no exceptions. Elara looked up. The West Greenhouse Mrs. Albright didn't respond. She only glanced at Elara like she had spoken a forbidden word. Dinner was non-existent, just a bowl of cold soup left in the fridge. Her assigned room wasn't luxurious, but it was so clean, it felt lifeless. No family photos, no smell of food, no trace of humanity. Like a forgotten hotel room. The next morning, before her alarm could go off, a knock came at the door. "Mr. Thorne wants you in the study. Now." Julian Thorne stood there, tall, chiseled, like he'd been carved from granite. Black t-shirt, dark grey pants, minimalist. But his eyes, icy blue, didn't look at her like a person, but like a puzzle waiting to be solved. "Summarize this morning's Asia market brief. 500 words. You have 1 hour." Elara blinked. "I thought this was a housekeeping job." Julian didn't move. 1 hour. Starting now. She sat down, fingers flying across the keyboard. Headlines, data analysis. She shoved aside her panic, digging deep as if Lily's life depended on every word. She didn't just summarize, she spotted trends, made predictions, and ended with a question aimed straight at a weakness in the current strategy. 59 minutes passed. Elara stepped into the office and placed the printout on his desk. Not a word. Julian picked it up, eyes scanning quickly. At the final sentence, he paused. Just for a moment, barely a flicker, his eyebrow lifted. No praise, no smile, but no dismissal either. He looked up. "Mrs. Albright will give you the schedule. You start tomorrow." Elara didn't know if she had passed a test or stepped into a maze with no way out. Night 10 at Thorn Crest. Elara sat alone in the gleaming kitchen, the only light casting her shadow onto the wall like a blot of spilled ink. Outside, the storm screamed against the cliffside wind, lashing the windows with a sound like the house itself was sobbing. She had learned to live with the silence here. Not a peaceful silence, but one born of absolute suppression. Every step, every breath had to be measured. But in that very silence, she had begun to notice a strange sound, a faint noise, whispering from the west. The glass house. Elara stood, her heart pounding, as if her body had made the decision before her mind could object. She moved quietly through the hallway, instinctively avoiding every camera. The western glass door was slightly ajar. A thin line of golden light leaked through the gap, the first warm light she had seen in this entire place. She pushed it open. It wasn't a garden like she had imagined. Inside was a forgotten sanctuary, a chapel of art. A dust-covered Steinway piano stood at the center. Half-finished oil paintings leaned against the walls, handwritten music sheets scattered like fallen petals. Everything was blanketed in time's dust, not dirty, but as if time itself had paused here waiting for someone to return and play the final note. Elara sat at the piano. Her fingers brushed the keys. A lonely sound echoed in the stillness. Claire de Lune. She whispered the piece her mother used to play every night. She began. The first note fell like a teardrop of moonlight. Slow, soft aching. The room exhaled, as if awakening from years of silence. She didn't know when he had arrived. Julian, standing at the doorway soaked from the rain, hair falling over his forehead. Not a word, no anger, only those icy eyes, melting. He looked like a child seeing his mother's shadow in a dream. That piece, he said softly. It was my mother's. She stopped playing. They looked at each other across the piano. This was her space, Julian murmured voice, barely a breath. She was a pianist. But my father hated music, said it was useless. After she died, he sealed this place. No one was allowed in. Elara started to say something, then didn't. She only nodded as if to say, I understand. He sat down across from her. Didn't touch the piano, just sat there, surrounded by memories, left unsaid. I hate chaos, he said, eyes distant. I created order so nothing could ever break. The way I lost her. Elara said nothing, no hollow wisdom, no forced comfort. She just listened. A pause, then Julian reached toward the piano keys, but his hand froze midway. His fingers trembled, then withdrew, as if burned by fire. There are some things you just can't play again. Elara didn't speak, but her eyes said what words couldn't. Not yet. Doesn't mean never. That dinner took place at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Carmel by the Sea. Elara wasn't a guest. She was there to organize documents and make sure Julian's wine glass stayed perfectly filled. The table glittered with candlelight and pretense. A financial partner from Manhattan, old wealthy and used to getting his way, was rambling on about profits' soft terms, and then, is that pretty assistant included in the deal? The words landed like a slap. Elara froze, cheeks flushing red. She gripped the tray of glasses, forcing a polite smile, like so many women before her, treated as decoration in a room full of power. But Julian didn't smile. He set his wine glass down on the table, not loudly, but firmly enough to kill every laugh in the room. You're insulting my guest, he said, voice calm, but cold as steel. And more importantly, you're insulting my intelligence by thinking I'd partner with someone so uncivilized. He turned to Elara. We're leaving. A multi-million-dollar deal evaporated into smoke, and Julian Thorne didn't look back once. That night, Elara sat alone in the silent kitchen. Steam rose from a cup of green tea, and the scent of rosemary from the bread she had just baked drifted softly through the house, a gentle defiance against its coldness. Julian entered unannounced. No longer the CEO with ice in his eyes, but a man carrying fractures. I'm sorry, he said. She looked up. For what? For letting you witness the worst parts of the world I live in. He poured a cup of tea and sat across from her. The warm light fell on half his face, revealing something delicate Elara hadn't seen before: weariness. When I was a kid, he said, my mother used to teach me to draw, architecture, music. She said art was how we survive without turning to stone. And now, Elara asked gently, now I'm stone, because being human hurts too much. They sat in silence, but it wasn't the cold silence she had known. It was a comfortable stillness, as if two lonely souls had stumbled upon the same melody, even if it was only the opening notes. In the days that followed, Elara didn't change Thorncrest's rules, but she changed its rhythm. She placed a vase of wildflowers on the breakfast table, the kind that grew by the roadside, unnoticed, yet resilient against the sea wind. She baked bread every morning, not for anyone to eat, but so the house would carry the scent of people. Julian didn't say a word, but he began to linger a little longer at breakfast. He sipped his coffee and sat quietly, eyes drifting toward the flowers. One afternoon, while tidying his office, Elara opened the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside, she found a notebook. It wasn't filled with market charts or investment plans. It held sketches, bridges, rooftops, window frames, hand-drawn with painstaking detail. An architect had fallen asleep inside the shell of a CEO. Elara ran her fingers across the page, then closed the notebook gently, like closing one door or opening another. Elara was trimming dried lavender stems into a glass vase when she heard the rumble of an engine, familiar yet wrong, echoing from the front gate. A Porsche Cayenne glided over the gravel path as if no rules applied to it. Marcus Thorne had arrived. He stepped out like he belonged in a movie half-smile. Crisp white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, a faint scent of expensive cologne leather, and power. Unlike Julian, Marcus entered a room as if he already owned it. Elara right. Marcus extended a hand. I've heard so much about you. The way he lingered on the word sent a chill down her spine. Marcus acted the part of a gracious guest, but his eyes missed nothing. Over dinner, he poured Julian's wine, told charming childhood stories, and turned to Elara with practiced concern. Your sister's at Juilliard impressive, talented, disciplined, and with a big sister shouldering everything. That's rare. Elara offered a soft smile. Julian said nothing, but after every compliment, Marcus left a subtle scratch Julian used to be very trusting. One mistake, and the consequences were permanent. Or I'm glad you're working here. Someone like you, with the right motivation, you could do anything. Elara began to feel like she was being measured, watched, and dissected. Julian, though silent, grew more restless than usual. He left his office early, took more walks, and started asking strange questions like, have you ever worked for any of our competitors? A few days later, while dusting the library, Elara found a folder casually left on the ebony desk. Odd Julian always locked everything away with precision. It was a merger file, plans to absorb a chain of tech startups into the Thorne empire, a deal worth hundreds of millions. On the top corner of the first page, someone had scrawled in blue ink, Elara. Double-check, Asian capital flows. She frowned. That wasn't Julian's handwriting, and he'd never assigned her anything like this. Just then, Marcus entered, smiling. Oh, I must have left that there. My mistake. Elara moved to hand it back, but Marcus raised a hand to stop her. Leave it. After all, someone clearly trusts you. There was a flicker of amusement in his gaze, like someone who had just planted a seed and was waiting for it to bloom into poison. That night, Elara sat in her room, staring at the digital copy of the document she had duplicated before realizing it was sensitive. Something didn't add up. The pages, the notes, it all seemed choreographed to lead to the wrong conclusion. She looked up and caught her reflection in the mirror. And for the first time since stepping into Thorne Crest, she saw something that sent a chill through her. She was becoming a pawn in a game whose rules she didn't understand. 3 days later, the news exploded like a bomb across the financial world. Thorne Industries had leaked details of a merger deal to a competitor. Estimated losses $320 million. The boardroom became a battlefield. Phones rang non-stop. Outside, the media swarmed like vultures. Inside, Julian stood frozen at his office window, fists clenched, jaw set like stone. There's evidence, Mrs. Albright said, her voice softer than usual. And I don't believe it. But still, Julian took the file. On the laptop screen was a security camera clip, a woman resembling Elara entering the library at midnight, holding a folder. Next came a bank statement. A large sum had been transferred to Lily Vance's account from a shell company with no clear origin. Julian said nothing, but his eyes turned to blades. Every layer of trust, every bit of warmth from mornings scented with bread, evaporated like mist. Elara was peeling apples in the kitchen when Julian walked in. No warning, no gentle glance. Just a man who had been betrayed or believed he had. He threw the folder onto the wooden table, sending a puff of dust off the piano cover like ash. Anything you want to say? She looked down at the papers. Her name, a forged signature. The notes Marcus had deliberately left behind, and the footage blurry, but enough to plant doubt. Elara froze for a moment. This is a setup. And the deposit to your sister's account. That's a scholarship. From Juilliard, after the early year auditions. I can't do anything. Julian cut her off, his voice low, but razor sharp. You're just like the rest of them. Smiling, playing piano, baking bread, and stabbing me in the back. Elara stood tall. She didn't step back, but her lips tightened, eyes glistening. What's your price, Elara? How much for your loyalty, your performance of loyalty? That question. It wasn't just doubt, it was a verdict. A total denial of who she was. A heavy silence filled the space. Elara nodded slowly. You just killed the last part of me that believed you were capable of loving anyone at all. She walked out of the music room, the place where they had once found connection. And Julian remained behind a stone statue, abandoned in the storm. After she left, he played the footage again, the first time in anger, the second in suspicion. By the third, he paused on a small detail, the ring on the woman's hand. It wasn't Elara's hand. That ring belonged to Marcus. Julian knew because he himself had thrown it into a drawer last year after a bitter argument about business ethics. His chest tightened. The rage dissolved, leaving behind something far more dangerous: regret. Elara didn't cry when she walked out of Thorn Crest. She didn't throw things, didn't scream, didn't crumble like the women in TV dramas often do. She just walked step by step, like someone who had just survived a crash. No broken bones, but everything inside her was cracked. Julian stood motionless in the music room. The folder of betrayal still lay there, its edges crumpled from how tightly he'd gripped it. The piano keys were still dusty, but now with one new mark, a faint handprint left by Elara as she turned away. He played the video again. This time, not in fast forward, not to find guilt, just to see. And then he saw it. A silver ring catching a flicker of light, an old-fashioned design Marcus always wore. Elara had never worn anything but a braided bracelet Lily had made for her. A chill ran down Julian's spine. He turned to Mrs. Albright. Marcus's email. Can you recover deleted files? An hour later, Mrs. Albright placed a document in front of him. An email deleted a week earlier. A partnership agreement between Marcus Thorne and Orion Capital, Julian's biggest competitor. Marcus was sprawled across the guest house sofa, whiskey in hand, the TV muted. Julian walked in. No noise, no warning. You figured it out, Marcus asked, like discussing a hand lost in poker. Julian didn't answer. He just stood there, arms at his sides, eyes empty. But his voice is razor sharp. You didn't just betray me, you destroyed the only good thing I had. Marcus shrugged. You've always had everything. I just took a piece back. And her? You really think she cared about you? Julian stepped forward each stride, like a hammer to stone. Standing inches from his brother, he spoke slowly. As of today, you are no longer my brother. You are a mistake, a scar from the past I'll never erase, but I'll never let it control me again. He turned and walked away, leaving Marcus alone, in the vast room empty, like the loyalty he had sold. That night, Julian sat alone in the music room. No playing, no words, just silence. He stared at the old Steinway and cried, not for Marcus, not for the money, but because in that moment of doubt, he had chosen suspicion over trust. He had shattered the one thing that made him feel human. Elsewhere in San Francisco, Elara slept on her best friend's sofa, exhausted, drained, but still breathing. She didn't know Julian had uncovered the truth. She wasn't waiting for that. All she knew was this: when trust breaks, it never returns the same. But sometimes from those shattered pieces, we find who we truly are. Julian didn't go looking for Elara right away. He knew an apology is empty if not built with action. He started therapy. He sold Thorncrest, the fortress of loneliness he once clung to like armor. He created an art scholarship in his mother's name, designed to support young talents like Lily. Elara was the first person he invited to be executive director, not to make amends, but because he believed only she could understand the kind of music money could never touch. When he arrived in San Francisco, Elara was making coffee at a small cafe near her workplace. He didn't bring flowers, no excuses, just Julian, tired, honest, no longer a ghost. "I'm not here to win you back," he said. "I'm here to say, you were right, and I'm trying to become the man you once believed in." Elara looked at him for a long time, then gave a small nod. "Trust isn't patched up with promises, but if you're ready to rebuild from the ground up, I'll hold the blueprint." 1 year later, the inaugural concert of the Scholarship Foundation. Lily stood on stage, violin in hand, the spotlight lighting up her radiant face. In the audience, Julian held Elara's hand. He leaned in and whispered, "Rebuilding an empire is easy compared to learning how to love right. Thank you for teaching me both." Elara smiled, a smile as warm as sunrise over the sea. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share Toch story, where scars aren't hidden but told in the light.